From the New York Times Learning Network, we want to welcome everybody to Teaching Narrative Writing with the New York Times. I'm Ross Flatt, Professional Development Manager at the New York Times Learning Network. So today's webinar is going to focus on our second unit in our free writing curriculum. It's all about teach narrative writing with the New York Times. And in this unit, we'll practice personal narrative writing prompts with your students so that they can engage in low-stakes writing. It then takes them through a series of mentor texts where students are invited to try some writer's moves from essays that have been published in the New York Times. We'll be sharing some of those with you later today. If you continue through the unit, it will end with our personal narrative writing contest, and that's something we're going to focus on a lot today. So in today's webinar, we're going to learn about the personal narrative writing contest and the resources that support it. We're going to explore writing prompts that you can use with your students to gain inspiration for writing personal narratives. And we'll analyze mentor texts from past contest winners and from other writers as well that can be used to identify key elements of personal narratives. Joining us today to take us through this is my professional development manager counterpart, Rachel Manley, and Natalie Proulx, staff editor at the New York Times Learning Network. So let's first talk a little bit more about our personal narrative writing contest and the resources that we have to support it. So I'm going to invite Rachel Manley on to tell us a little bit more about our personal narrative writing contest.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Ross. I'm excited to be on today to talk about our contest and all of the great resources and tools that we have for personal narrative writing. In this contest, we invite students to tell a short story about a meaningful life experience or moment, whether that is big or small. So all of the contest entries should be a true story. We want stories and narratives that are short, powerful stories about meaningful life experiences. Contest entries need to be submitted by middle and high school students. The essays need to be 600 words or less. And we are asking for 1 entry per student. And while some of our other contests, we encourage collaboration and teamwork, this one we ask that students work alone. All of our winning contest entries have a range and have a unique voice that they convey in their stories, but all of them really exemplify sharing a short, small, memorable moment in their lives that is meaningful. In our first winners, you can see here, Jennifer wrote about a shopping trip that made her see her mom in a new light. This winning entry, Pants on Fire, Vara painted us a beautiful picture of the lies that she told in 4th grade in order to fit in with others. In this winning entry, Eggs and Sausage, Ryan describes the first meal that he had in the hospital after a suicide attempt. And in Sorry, Wrong Number, Michelle describes the experience that followed an unintended text message that she received. And lastly, Gordon in The Man Box writes a very sort of vulnerable and meaningful story about a conversation that he had with a friend that really made him think differently about his friendship and his relationships. So you can see here all of these winning entries are very unique and different from one another, but they all capture a meaningful, memorable moment and story in these young people's lives.
What we also want to see is, Natalie, I'm going to ask you to come on and join us.
Hello, everyone. I'm Natalie Proulx. I'm an editor at the Learning Network. And I'm really excited to talk to you about our narrative contest today.
Welcome, Natalie. So, Natalie, you also judged the contest last year. Can you tell us a little bit more about what judges are looking for in these narrative essays?
Absolutely. So we have a rubric that we judge this contest on, and it looks for a few different things. The first is that we want it to tell a short, memorable story with a larger meaning or message that readers can relate to. Next, we're looking for fun, playful use of language. We want stories that use vivid details and images to make the writing come alive and make it fun to read. And we're also looking for voice. Narrative contest is one of the most fun ones for students to write because they can write in their real, authentic, unique voices. And we love to see their personality come through on the page. And finally, because this is a story, not a reflective essay, not an opinion essay, it should have a narrative arc. So a beginning, a middle, and an end that's driven by a conflict and has a resolution or spurs some kind of meaningful life change at the end.
All right, thanks, Natalie. So this is a really interesting contest because they're not writing some sort of an opinion piece or an article. They're really creating a story. It's a true story, but we're really looking for some interesting writing happening in here with a very unique voice. What we're going to do now is we're going to explore different writing prompts that you can use with your students to gain inspiration for writing personal narratives. But first, let's practice this. What we're going to ask you to do is respond to the following writing prompt in the group chat. Take about a minute. Tell us about one recent moment of happiness in your life. Take about a minute and we'll continue. I am seeing a ton of really interesting moments coming in right now. All right, so Rachel, I'm going to ask you to come back on, and maybe you can help me kind of look through these dozens and dozens and dozens of moments that are coming in. So I'm seeing, watching my son give his first salute as an officer to his great uncle who served in Vietnam, laughing in class with students about a character in a short story that they read today. Irma talked about being told that her daughter is pregnant. Anything else that sticks out to you, Rachel?
I saw a really heartwarming message of someone who got their entire classroom wish list bought for them as the school started, which is really lovely.
That's great.
Pumpkin patches. Right. I'm seeing horseback riding and pumpkin patches.
So this is a real writing prompt that we've used before on the Learning Network. So Rachel, can you tell us a little bit more about the writing prompts that students can do on our site?
Yeah, of course. So the Learning Network's writing prompts are some of our popular features. We publish writing prompts every day of the week during the school year. And these writing prompts really help students write often, improve their writing, engage in low stakes writing, and really hone in on their authentic voice, and also give them an authentic audience if they were posting the responses on our site. We have two types of writing prompts that we offer every day. The first is student opinion. And in student opinion, we have students read a Times article and then respond to a student opinion question, sharing their own ideas and thoughts. And then we also have something called picture prompts, which is similar, but instead we use an image from the Times. And so these are short image-driven prompts that really invite students to think and write without some of the high stakes that are involved in reading a full article. So we have a large collection of personal narrative writing prompts that get students thinking about these short, memorable moments that they can write about. Have you ever been told you couldn't do something because of your gender? Do you ever feel embarrassed by your parents? When do you lie? And we have a collection of 550 writing prompts from over the years that are geared towards getting students writing about their stories and improve their narrative writing. So that resource is linked in the webinar resource link for you as well.
All right, so these prompts are really exciting, and clearly, as we saw in the group chat, they really get people to just, start to write a little bit in a very, very low stakes way. But how do these lead or possibly lead to a narrative essay or even a winning narrative essay? So Natalie, can you tell us a little bit more about this? What is the relationship between these writing prompts that we offer and a full-on narrative essay?
Yeah, of course. So there's a few different ways that you can use these writing prompts in your classroom to help inspire narrative essays. One is that they can just help students come up with ideas. You saw there are a whole bunch of different angles that students can take in those writing prompts, and they help students think about their life more broadly other than just a biography. So we encourage students to maybe choose a few that they're interested in and write responses to them. And then they might choose one that they enjoyed writing and turn it into a personal narrative. Or maybe those responses will trigger some other kind of memories or experiences that they then want to write about. Another thing that these prompts can do is help you hone in on a specific moment to write about. So again, this isn't a reflective essay. It's not an opinion essay. It's not an autobiography. We're really asking students to write about a specific moment in their lives. And all your responses to that writing prompt earlier, you came up with very, very specific memories. I saw somebody say a recent moment of happiness was their daughter curling into a hug with them. That's like so specific and so vivid. And that's what these writing prompts can help students do, is to hone in on a particular moment. And then finally, we publish writing prompts every week that have to do with narrative writing. So this can be a space for your students to practice their narrative writing in a low stakes way, and to start to play with some of the tools and the elements of narrative writing that we're going to talk about later in this webinar.
All right, cool. So it's, I when I look at these, I kind of see these as sort of like a warm up or stretching to help, it really get students ready to maybe write something bigger, or just, like you said, it maybe if they can't think of anything, it just really helps get it going for them. Let's now take a look at mentor texts. So Rachel, could you tell us a little bit more about the mentor texts that we use here? How can they use them?
Yeah, so many of you may already use mentor texts in your classroom. You may use them and not label them as that. And they are texts that we can return to over and over again and reread for various purposes, and really use them as a mentor for writing. And they really help to demystify the writing process, and give really meaningful, authentic, achievable examples that students can learn from and emulate in their own writing. So we've published, hearing from teachers that they love and use writing mentor texts in their classrooms. We started publishing a series of mentor texts. We started these with using pieces directly from the Times, so using articles, different columns, pieces from the Times, as well as bringing on some student work from previous contest winners.
All right, so maybe we could take a look at what some of those key elements are. What is it that these mentor texts help students reveal?
So in writing our personal narrative unit in our writing curriculum, we identified 7 key elements of narrative writing, and then found mentor texts from the Times that really exemplified each of these key elements. We look for stories that exemplify a small but memorable event or moment in the students' lives, using details to show, not tell. We encourage students to write from their own point of view and in a real voice. We know really great personal narratives often use dialogue effectively. They use strategies like dropping the reader directly into a scene rather than explaining and giving background. And personal narratives tell a complete story with a true narrative arc. And the 7th one, personal narratives reflecting on the experience and giving the reader a takeaway. And we'll see an example of that one today too. We're going to touch on a few of these elements today and share some examples of mentor texts, both directly from the Times as well as from previous contest winners, that really exemplifies some of these different key elements. So let's take a look at one together. We have a great mentor text on helping students write in their real voice and finding their voice. And so what we're going to do together is we are going to read a short paragraph from the beginning of a piece. And as we read that, I want you to think about voice throughout the beginning paragraph. And I want you to answer the question of, where do you feel you can hear voice best?
noticing a lot of people really liked the line, "So the hell what?" I think that's a really good one. We have "big deal." Lots of moments of slang happening in this that you probably wouldn't see in a lot of other types of writing, especially, like informative writing.
Flinched at the shout. Some of these short sentences kind of allows you to hear that person maybe even thinking or saying those things.
Anything else we need to know about this narrative that we took a look at?
The only other thing I'll say is I'll encourage you to look at the mentor text pieces, because not only do they share a lot of really great mentor text to use, it walks you through activities to do with your students. So this activity we just did now is the beginning part, but it walks you through things to do before reading, during reading, and then encourages students to try some of the strategies and writer's moves that they saw in that mentor text.
And just to reiterate, these mentor texts that we're showing right now, these are either from professional writers or published writers.
Yeah, so all of the ones that are linked to those 7 key elements in our unit take from the lives column of the Times or other Times articles and pieces that really showcase this personal narrative. But we are also hoping to showcase some student voices and use student pieces as mentor texts.
So why don't we talk a little bit more about that? So Natalie, I could imagine, if you're an educator, or if you're a student, all these mentor texts look great. It looks really hard though. So what have we been doing to sort of make this a little bit more digestible to students, or maybe a little less intimidating?
We now have student examples as mentor texts in our Annotated by the Author series. And we began this series by inviting Times journalists to annotate their own articles to sort of help demystify the research and the writing process. So they told us all about, the words they used and the sentence structure that they employed to create some of the things that you just commented on in that last essay. And we thought, we have so much great writing from the student winners of our contest. Why not ask them to do the same thing? So we invited 3 winners from last year's personal narrative contest to comment on their own essays, taking us behind the scenes of their writing process. So the 3 that we're going to talk about today, and the 3 that you will see published on our site in the coming weeks, are Speechless by Maria Fernanda Benavides, Pants on Fire by Varia Kluev, and Cracks in the Pavement by Adam Bernard Sanders. We also did interviews with those students, asking them a little bit more about their narratives and what went into creating them. So now we're going to share clips of those interviews with you to hear the students talk about their writing.
All right, so the first student that we're going to meet is Maria Fernanda Benavides, and she wrote the winning essay Speechless. And the writer's move that we want to take a look at is dropping the reader into a scene. So let's take a look at Maria Benavides talking about her essay, Speechless.
My name is Maria Benavides, and my narrative is about this experience that I had at my first high school speech tournament. May fear, Mar fear, the tournament judge called squinting her eyes trying to find the spelling error, although there was no error. It's my fair. It's a nickname for my full name, Maria Fernanda. She stared at me blankly.
I love the way that this sort of drops readers directly into the scene. I'm wondering if we could talk about the opening lines for a minute.
Yeah, I really struggled with the beginning of the essay. In my original draft, I think it took me 6 or 7 paragraphs to get to this point in the story, which I do really often when I write. I am not a concise writer, but then after rereading it several times, I just realized that the story really started at the moment when the judge called out my name. My parents are creative. I lied, and she laughed. Okay, Mafir, you're up. I wanted to say that I was from another country, that I was a foreigner in a different way, not by saying I moved to the US when I was 14, I'm not American, and this is why this is important to the story. I just thought that since my name is something that's been so important in my speech experience, it only felt right to start my essay by the mispronunciation of my name, because it was such a big deal in those 4 years that I competed. I walked to the center and scanned the room before starting as instructed. I took a deep breath. I reminded myself, use your voice.
Okay.
So I just wanted to point out.
Oh, I was going to say, I was going to ask Natalie. Natalie, you go ahead.
I was just going to point out some of the things that I was seeing in the chat that people were noticing about what Maria was talking about. And I saw a few people talk about how she speaks about her rewriting process, because a lot of students might look at the winning essays on our site and think, oh, they wrote that in one go. But Maria really talks about how it took her a long time to get to the beginning of this essay, and she had to cut things out, and she had to talk with others to get feedback on her essay. So that's a really important lesson, I think, that kids could take away from this too.
Yeah, I remember, because I was producing this interview with you when we were speaking to her, and I think she said that she cut 5 paragraphs before she actually got to the beginning part of the essay, and really didn't want to get rid of it. But oh my God, like, look how much better the essay turned out as a result.
Yeah, I love the way this one begins. You're just right in the action, right from the first sentence.
Yeah. All right. So we have another writer's move that we want to talk a little bit about: show, not tell. So Natalie, can you tell us just a little bit about this one?
Yeah, another thing that we noticed from a lot of the winners in our contest, the things that stuck out to us, is that they really created these vivid scenes, using imagery, using metaphor, using really descriptive details that made their writing really interesting to read. And the student that we're about to watch did this exceptionally well.
Okay. Now, maybe before we watch this next student, why don't we have our participants practice this writer's move and see how they do. So we want you to rewrite a sentence that we're going to give you, and we'd like you to make it a little bit more descriptive. And because maybe it's close to dinner time for some of you who are watching this, we want you to take this line: "The pizza was delicious," and see if you can make that more descriptive. I'm seeing a lot of really interesting examples of show, not tell happening here. Somebody talked about pineapple pizza. Sweet pineapple exploded in my mouth against the salty ham and tomato sauce.
I saw somebody say the gooey cheese tight-roped across my mouth. What a good image that is.
That was really great.
Another person, I see a lot of people using the sense of sight, and another person used actually the sense of smell. Basil perfumed the air. I can smell that right now.
Yeah, as I inhaled the smell of basil and tomato, I knew my taste buds would cheer as I savored every amazing bite. All right, so lots of really good examples of show, not tell. And we're going to take a look at another student, Varya Proulx, and we're going to take a look at her writer's move of using details to show, not tell. So let's take a look.
I never kissed the boy I liked behind the schoolyard fence that one March morning. I never had dinner with Katy Perry or lived in Kiev for 2 months either. But I still told my entire 4th grade class I did. My name is Varya Proulx, and Pants on Fire, my narrative, is a story about my experience with lying. I lied purely for the ecstasy of it. It was narcotic. With my fabrications, I became the captain of the ship, not just a wistful passerby, breath fogging the pane of glass that stood between me and the girls I venerated. No longer could I only see, not touch. A lie was a bullet, and the barrier shattered.
What about that are you proud of?
I love metaphor. It's one of my favorite things to read and therefore to try to infuse into my own writing. You know, it's really the first lesson that we learn in those kindergarten writing workshops: show, not tell. And with a metaphor, which really is just an analogy or a comparison, you get the chance to express an idea creatively. You don't just tell, you don't explain, you show. And this catches people's attention. And if I read a very good metaphor, I get lost in this intellectual image. And I find myself really moved and taking in the idea and the substance of what the author is trying to get across. So I'm not just reading, I'm experiencing. Not only did I lie religiously and unabashedly, I was good at it. The tedium of my everyday life vanished. I instead marched through the gates of my Alcazar, strode up the steps of my concepts, and resided in my throne of deceit. When I looked at the girls who were in my circle and all the classmates that surrounded me, I naturally put myself at sort of a lower standard. So when I thought, oh, I need to lie, I need to embellish myself and make myself greater than who I am in order to sort of fit in, be accepted, get some friends, I embellish this with my metaphors. So in this case, I hope to highlight myself as this distinct character entering this new world of pomp and glamour and royalty. And I wanted the separation to mirror the true nature of what I was doing with my lies and the point of my story.
So I just wanted to share again some of the comments that I'm seeing in the chat. People say, you know, this is one of their favorite essays. And if you haven't read Varia's essay, again, it's called Pants on Fire. It's one of the winners of our 2019 narrative contest. Do yourselves a favor and go and read it. And I see other people pointing out the way that she takes this show not tell to heart. The imagery of the fogged pane of glass shattered by her lies, her bullets, just so perfect and clear. The throne of my deceit. And you notice from this interview, you know, every metaphor she uses is very, very intentional to explain, you know, a little bit about her character, a little bit about the conflict that she's facing. So we thought that was a great example to share with teachers and with students.
Another great essay, just metaphor upon metaphor upon metaphor, but all with a purpose, as you say, Natalie. And it just, you know, you can kind of get this image of, you know, sort of her, you know, her real life being in fourth grade, you know, being in the cafeteria, being on the playground, but then also you kind of juxtapose that with her, you know, all of the lies she's kind of spinning as she's telling this. It's really great. And it was really great to kind of hear her read that and talk a little bit more about it. All right, so why don't we talk about this writer's move, reflecting on the experience and giving your reader a takeaway.
Yeah, so one of the most challenging things to do with the narrative essay is to end it, to write that last line. And we talked to Adam Sanders, another winner of our 2019 narrative contest, because we thought he really managed to pull off an ending that left readers with something to think about without being too heavy-handed, without making a sweeping conclusion or, you know, ending with a platitude. So he struck that balance nicely. And we're going to watch a video of him now talking about how and why he decided to end the way he did.
Hi, my name is Adam Bernard Sanders. My essay, Cracks in the Pavement, is about a middle school geography bee where a panic attack really got the best of me. It was my third time sitting there on the middle school auditorium stage. The upper chain of braces was caught in my lip again, and my palms were sweating, and my glasses were sliding down my nose. The pencil quivered in my hands. All I had to do was answer whatever question Mrs. Christofouli, the history teacher, was going to say into that microphone. This is not a story about making an error. This is a story about anxiety, about the feeling of panic, about how it controls you and how it steals things from you that you feel like you should have and that you really do deserve. I'm not saying, you know, I deserve to win, but anxiety steals the chance. And I was so busy counting my pulse and envisioning my demise that I missed Mrs. Christofouli's utterance of the awaited question into her microphone, as I had each year in the past as one of the two people left on stage.
Why did you decide to write about this particular experience, and why was it meaningful to you?
So this is a moment that really stood out as a particular low for me. No matter how scared I am about how others are going to perceive me if I lose, I'm most scared about how I'm going to perceive myself. Am I going to wake up the next morning and be a loser, be a no one, be the kid who made the mistake in my eyes? So, for the third time in 3 years, I got it wrong. And for the third time, I didn't die. I walked home that day, tracing the faults in the pavement and wondering what inside me was so cracked and broken. Something had to be fissured inside, like the ridges and rivers on my desk globe that I would throw out later that evening, but fish from the trash can when the sun rose the next day.
I love that last paragraph too. Go ahead and tell us a little bit about it.
So when you're normally writing an essay or even like a narrative, your teacher's always going to be like, oh, you really shouldn't use so or but, it's not proper grammar, it's conversational. But this was a piece that up until now I felt was very tense and emotional and painful. And so by starting with so, I am like shifting the mood of the piece. So for the third time in 3 years, I got it wrong. And for the third time, I didn't die. It's almost trivializing what I had gone through and making it a little bit more lighthearted. And I like that because I think if not for that experience, who knows what kind of growth I would have missed.
Wondering why you ended with this sort of action instead of that summarizing line.
So I like to end my narratives and most of my pieces of writing with a kind of active or open finish line, because I really think that when you end something so summarily, you aren't leaving room for the reader to interpret it or see the ending or see the meaning in their own way. Because I can see 8 million messages or themes in my own essay, and then I presented this essay to classmates or friends or teachers who have seen it in a whole new light. And when you summarize your essay in a way that is like, this is the meaning, here's what you should take away, I think you're denying your reader the chance to make their own inspiration.
So again, I'm seeing lots of people have a lot of things to say about Adam's essay. Even the word choices he uses in that last paragraph, fissured inside, fishing from the trash can. It really helps to, develop that voice that makes it interesting and fun to read, and you see his unique personality coming through. And then I'm seeing people say, so moves the narrator into a distant observer, opens to reflection. That's another thing that a good narrative does, right? It's not just about the action of the story. It's about you stepping back to reflect on what happened and what it meant to you. So there's a lot to mine from that essay. And I wanted to point out, this would be a great exercise to try with your own students after they've written a narrative, to have them talk about the writer's moves they made, so that they can see, everything that these kids did was really, really intentional.
All right, so we are nearing the end of today's webinar. I do want to ask you, Natalie, if you have any final advice, but before you weigh in, why don't we hear one more time from all three of the students? What advice would they give to students who are interested in entering this contest?
Do you have any advice you'd like to give for young writers who might be applying to this contest this year?
Start early because it is a heavy topic. Like at first you think, oh, like I have many short stories, like I can definitely think of something. But when you really think about the prompt, you do really want to take your time and think about a moment in time that was really important to you.
So when I sat down to write it, I started with this giant list. I just want to get it out of the way firsthand to write down all the possible ideas that I could have. And that's exactly what I did.
Think narrow. The smallest moments make the greatest stories. When you focus on one moment, one instant, you're really giving more room for analysis and for introspection. And that's what people want to read.
Write something out that really matters to them. Just because, especially given that it is a personal essay, it is really important to really feel what it is that you're writing about.
So my editing process is normally like, I think of it as grow the forest, kill all the trees. So I write something that's really long, and then I think, what here is unnecessary? What can I cut?
A big hurdle is trying to be concise. Everyone says that, a good writer knows how to get across their point without using too many words. But I like words. I think words are fun and they're pretty. It hurts me to delete it. So learning how to choose and cherry pick what sentence I want to keep, that was something I had to really sit down and force myself to do.
And also be open to feedback and don't be scared to cut things, because sometimes I know that we can get very personal with the writing, and a little detail that you think is the most important thing in the world in the long run actually doesn't really matter that much. So just listen to what others say, because it is very important.
My advice for future contestants is simply to submit. Writing, really, it's so subjective. So you don't know what is objective. You don't know what's bad or good until you try. And there's really no harm. You just have the experience and you have the enjoyment. So just do it.
Okay, lots of really good advice there. A few folks in the chat picked up on some of that. So Natalie, anything that they said that really stuck out to you, and anything you'd like to add?
I mean, I'll just note a few things since I judged this contest last year, just a few things that we noticed that separated these winning essays from the ones that didn't win. Like Adam said, focus on a very specific moment and tell a story. Again, this isn't a reflective essay about your life or a resume of your accomplishments. We're really looking for a story that has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and is driven by a conflict in some way that changes the character, the narrator, at the end of the story. And another thing, like Maria said in the video, make sure it's meaningful to you. We had a lot of students last year write about moments that were dramatic and significant, like breaking their arm or winning the championship or a grandparent dying. But in the end, these kind of fell flat because students didn't really reflect on what it meant to them, that moment, why it was important, and they didn't share a larger meaning that other readers could relate to, a lesson learned or a universal message. So that's the other piece of advice that I would say to really focus on in this contest to make your essay stand out.
I would agree with all of that. And we invite your students to take the advice that Varya gave us earlier. Just submit and give it a shot. You know, writing is very subjective, and all of your students have really amazing stories to tell. So we are really excited to take a look at what they will be submitting this year. So on behalf of the Learning Network, I do want to thank you, Natalie. I want to thank you, Rachel, for joining us today.
Thank you, everyone.
And we want to thank everyone else for tuning in, and we will see you next time.